I'm Nick Flights, agronomist for Pentair High Pro. And when I started working with spray nozzles, I had a lot of people ask me, how long do spray nozzles last? And it's actually a really good question because nozzles are wear parts and they do not last forever. And so I was trying to find a good answer for this question, and nobody really had any data that they were sharing that was a good answer so that a farmer and applicator could track the lifespan of their nozzles and have a defined point to say, I need to look at the condition of my nozzles, I need to consider changing them because we may be getting toward the end of that lifespan. And so to do this, I had several applicators across a wide swath of the US track the number of acres they sprayed with those nozzles and then send them back to me at the end of the spraying season so I could test their wear rate. And we use 40 psi as a reference pressure for spray nozzles. And when we're talking about nozzle wear, what we're talking about is the flow rate. And as nozzles wear through use over time, the orifices inside increase in size due to wear. And so they allow a higher liquid flow rate at a given pressure. And so that's why I set them up at 40 psi. We use that reference pressure because it's a known quantity. I tested the flow rate, and that gave me this graph here that we're looking at. And so you see I had sets of nozzles that range from 8 to 44,000 acres of usage and several points in between. And you see once we got to about 40,000 acres, we crossed over the 10% wear threshold. So we had an increase in flow at 40 psi of 10% there. Now the industry standard for nozzle wear and when we recommend you change spray nozzles is 10% wear. Now you might say 10% wear, I'm just getting them broken in. They've got plenty of life left in them. And that's true for a lot of things that we use on the farm. But that's not really the case for spray nozzles. And you might have heard people say in the past, I'm talking about nozzle wear, if you use more nozzles, you're going to waste money by over applying. That's not true with our modern sprayers. And so the table we're showing now is going to help us explain why and show one of the impacts of using worn nozzles on your sprayer. So the first three columns on the left, you have pressure, droplet size, and flow rate. And that's just generic information I took from a table from one of our nozzles. The next column is titled actual flow rate. I've imposed 10% wear, so I increase the flow rate by 10% wear. And then there's a column titled actual pressure. It's shaded in a light red or pink. So that column is doing some math for us. So our modern sprayers have an internal flow rate controller. So before you spray, you're going to go in the monitor. You're going to say, I want to spray, say, at 10 gallons per acre. So let's say you set up and you think you need to run at 50 psi to get your 10 gallon acre per output at the speed you want to drive. Because the nozzles we are using have 10% wear, the flow rate is actually higher than published on that chart. So the flow rate controller is going to sense and see that the flow rate is a little bit higher, and it's going to reduce pressure to maintain the target rate you're looking for. The rate controller in the sprayer is going to ensure you hit rate. So you're not going to over apply, you're going to apply at a different pressure because of the higher flow rate. So if you're set up to spray at 50 psi, that's probably not a big deal. We're going to be about 38, 39 psi in this example. So it's just a lower pressure. The only issue that could occur is maybe a change in droplet size. But where this could be an issue for you, let's say you were set up to spray at 30 psi instead. Well, now if you look at that red column, we're actually spraying about 22, 23 psi. So that puts us right at the bottom of the recommended pressure range for this nozzle. If you go over terraces or rough ground in your field, we're going to pull that hydro handle back and slow down. That is a case where the sprayer is also going to have to reduce pressure so you're not over applying. And that is an area where we could see pattern collapse. You're not going to see the full overlap between individual spray patterns across the boom. And so the uniformity of coverage across the width of the boom is going to go down. That is an area with that loss of coverage, we could see pest escapes and poor agronomic performance. Now, it's not just the flow rate that we're concerned about either. It's also the uniformity of the spray pattern being created. So this image, I think, is a really powerful image, and I use it a lot. And I've highlighted in the two red boxes some spray patterns that are very ugly. There's heavy streaking that you can see in areas where we're likely over applying, that you could see crop injury, or you could see herbicide carryover in a dry year. And then right next to that, there's areas that you can see straight through, where very little spray is being deposited. and that's an area that we could see pest escapes from a reduced rate application. Now this could occur from damage, physical damage, or residue buildup over time. Some of our products like atrazine, dry flowables, wettable powders, we can get residue buildup that can influence and alter the formation of the spray pattern. Bottom line is the cost per acre of nozzle, a set of nozzles across a 50,000 acre lifespan is pennies. So if we take a $13 nozzle, which is on the more expensive end, and you take its lifespan over 50,000 acres, the resulting cost is 2 to 3 cents per acre across 50,000 acres. So don't let the act of trying to save 2 to 3 cents per acre ultimately cost you dollars in lost agronomic performance. So to wrap up, I recommend a general lifespan for your spray nozzles of 45 to 60,000 acres, or if you haven't met that 45 to 60,000 acres, consider changing them every 5-year interval.